links up with terrorist extremists with a terrorist extremist purpose, who may become inspired by this extremist propaganda. Linking up with extremists and then returning back to their home countries with an extremist mission.
All right, so Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson, not afraid to say extremists, very reluctant to say something else today. Something that this hero was practically begging to hear from anyone in Washington yesterday. This problem we have is saying Islamic extremists. What do you think of that? Why we're having such difficulty saying those words?
I think it started somewhere up top in D.C. We can't take that name Islamic out of it. I mean, they want it to be called the Islamic State. Let it be that. And the second that we stop trying to understand our enemy is where we really screw up. We have to fully understand our, essentially our enemy. And ISIS, the Islamic State, that's their name. Let it be that.
No, it might be that, but they're not saying that because the good sergeant's still waiting. And let's just say a lot of you who heard him, well, you're not. Welcome, everybody. I'm Neil Cavuto. And really, he did not mince words, did he? And neither did you. Kathy via Twitter. Your guest, Nick Irving, was amazing. He's got more guts, thoughtfulness, and humanity than anyone in D.C. Understatement. Nick writes the following: the vast majority of Congress and the White House are not worthy to shine Sergeant Irving's shoes for all he's done for us. Thanks. And Joshua, tremendous interview of the Ranger. Sniper Nick Irving, great American. If we had more like him, we would be better off. So many like that. So many. Well, Josh, we do have more like him, and some of them are right here with me now. And very much echoing everything Sergeant Nick said then, that we are an exceptional country and it is time we start acting like it. But we're not saying it. And for these heroes, that is the problem. Retired U.S. Army Ranger Sean Parnell, Medal of Honor recipient Dakota Meyer, and former USS Cole Commander Kirk Lippold. Welcome to all of you. I'm deeply honored. Commander Cole, if I could begin with you. This idea, this reluctance that saying the words is the problem. Now, this has been talked about again and again on all various shows, but it cuts to the core. According to the sergeant, it cuts to the core of how we address a problem, but whether we even think it's a problem. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, Neil. 3 simple words: radical Islamic terrorists. They're not that hard to say. It clearly defines the problem. It defines who we are fighting against, what we are fighting against, and why it's so important for the American people to know why those 3 words can't be used remains just an unexplained fact that the administration won't address. And as long as we duck and dodge around it, we're not truly going to get to the core issue that we need to be fighting against.
Well, Sergeant Meyer, not to play off a Hillary Clinton term, but what difference would it make? You often hear that. What difference would it make readdressing our terms or how we refer to bad guys?
I don't know. I mean, I think the issue is that the administration has become so politically correct that they can't even state what the problem is. So how do we find a solution when we can't state what the problem is? I mean, what does it matter? I mean, it is what it is. I mean, we all know it's radical Islam. So these terrorists, I mean, we have to state what they are so we can fix it.
Well, Sean, the argument against, this terminology is that it's just terminology. We know the bad guys. We know who they are. We know where they are. Yeah. So why do we have to state the obvious? Now, the sergeant was telling me yesterday we have to wake up to the severity of the problem and realize, to his words, the evil that's among us. What do you say?
Well, I think he's absolutely right. If you cannot name and clearly define your enemy, you are unable to defeat that enemy. And let's just be very clear here. Radical Islamic terror aren't just the enemy of the United States of America. They're the enemy of the entire world. They're the enemy of every man, woman, and child from every race, creed, and religion the world over. And they have to be defeated. And in order to defeat them, you have to name who they are.
All right, but the argument against doing that is that we set ourselves up as being able to judge, that we are exceptional, that we, by definition, know where the bad guys are, and we can point out the bad guys because we're that good, we're that great. And there's a reluctance to do that because there's a feeling, and I'll raise this with you, Commander Lippold, that we're reluctant to say we're exceptional. We're reluctant to say we are the world's beacon, that we don't like that. We don't like being put in that position because with it comes a great deal of responsibility. What do you think of that?
Well, there's a lot to be said. There's a difference between going around beating your chest and claiming all these, self-aggrandizing terms that you might want to use for us as Americans. I think most Americans in the world know we have for generations had a quiet confidence in being a beacon of freedom for the world that other people aspire to live up to, that people want to come here to live the way we do, to enjoy the freedoms that we do. And if that life is being threatened by these radical Islamic terrorists, then we in fact have to find a way to define that problem. That way we can go after them. It's defined for the world so that they know what the threat is, as was mentioned, not only here in America, but around the world, because they represent a threat to the world.
You know, Sergeant Meyer, one of the things I realized talking to this U.S. Decorated sniper was this idea that snipers now have been vilified. You've heard what Governor Jesse Ventura has said about the character in the Sniper movie, that he was no hero, far from it, that he was a liar, and etc. But that we're turning on our version of real heroes, and that, you know, whether it's Howard Dean talking about the fact that it's a bunch of Tea Party nuts seeing this kind of movie, and that it's all part of the same mix, that we are not really embracing those who try to take out the bad guys. We are now seeing many, at least in the extreme left of Hollywood, they are the bad guys. Does that trouble you, given the sacrifice that you've made?
You know, I mean, I think the thing is you see like the Michael Moores, Jesse Venturas. I mean, look, they're the problem. I mean, how about this? You know, they can not agree with the war, but don't go against the people who are willing to go fight it on their behalf. You know, none of us made the decision to go fight the war, so that's irrelevant to it. But all of us were willing to go do it and be greater people on behalf of this country. And I tell you, if for someone to stand back and to call our service members cowards, whether it's snipers or whoever it is, you know, it's really unfortunate to hear that, and that's part of the problem. I mean, I tell you, we've got over 22 veterans a day committing suicide, and that's part of the problem, is because of people like that who are out there calling them cowards and not recognizing their sacrifices.
You know what I'm wondering, Sean, that there might have been a method to what we hear out of the White House, or we hear out of many in power in Washington, that is the reluctance to say Islamic extremists or whatever, that you don't want to re-engage in the Middle East. You don't want to get involved in another war. You don't want to get involved in another protracted struggle, that this is something that we just don't have the stomach for, and this reflects that, and that this is part of this concerted strategy to avoid it, and that it's not by accident. What do you think?
Sure. I mean, I think it is part of a concerted strategy. I think you're exactly right. I think this administration is also afraid to alienate the vast majority of Muslims who are peace-loving people. But I would say, on the contrary, to name the threat, you know, empowers peace-loving Muslims to stand up and then combat what is a very perverse form of their own religion within the confines of their own faith.
But the fact that they haven't done that in droves, Sean, and you're quite right, some have, but that maybe that's the fear here, that they won't do that, and the administration kind of realizes that. But I always wonder, maybe, Commander, I could pick it up with you, that have we gotten anything for our trying to be correct about this, politically or otherwise? Have we gotten any concessions out of this so-called modern part of the Muslim world for not using these terms, for not saying the kind of thing that rubs a lot of them the wrong way? What have we gotten for being so careful?
Neil, after 14 years of not calling it what it is, what has it gotten us? We're still involved in these conflicts. They're still coming after us. They're still killing Americans. So the bottom line is, what would we gain by continuing to do something that does not work? We need to find a new way, and that may be define the problem, move forward, and then if we need to adjust along the way to narrow the scope of what it really is, then let's do it. But if we don't define that problem, calling them radical Islamic terrorists that use this version of radical Islam to further their agenda, then I think that we are missing the mark, and we have been missing it now for 14 years.
You know, Sergeant, we're going to be getting into this later in the show, but this movie, American Sniper, more to the point, has played all around the world, and it's received enthusiastic responses, ironically enough, in much of the Middle East. Are you surprised by that?
No, I mean, you know, look, they were there too. I mean, you know, I want to say this: the radical Islamic terrorists are not representation of all Muslims across the world. I mean, there are Muslims over there who are fighting the same fight of these radical Islamic terrorists. So, I mean, I know it's not surprising.
All right. Now, you know, what people are going to say, Sean, hearing something like this is we're all worked up at how we say stuff. And guys like you, heroes like all of you, don't really bother with semantics. You know the bad guy. You know how to seek out the bad guy. You know where they are. Terms mean little to you. But you all seem to be saying to a man, much like the sergeant yesterday, that sometimes getting it right and using the right language does matter. Why does it matter? To you, Sean, why does that matter so much?
Well, because you have to clearly define who your enemy is. For this, I mean, how the commander-in-chief refers to our enemies has a direct reflection to how we engage people on the ground.
Why do you think he does it then, Sean? Do you think he does it to pull his punches, not to re-engage, that you call these workplace shooting incidents? You've heard it all.
Yeah, I think it's a tragedy. I don't agree with it, but I think he thinks that it's going to alienate the vast majority of Muslims that he is trying to curry favor with. Like I said, I don't agree with that. I think by naming the threat, it empowers them to combat it on their own. And I think part and parcel with that is also giving moderate, peace-loving Muslims a platform to talk and speak out against this radicalism within their own faith. And so, like I said, I don't agree with the president's plan. I haven't agreed with it at all. But I think what we need to do is empower Muslims, like I said, the peace-loving Muslims, to take action.
You know, Sergeant, the one thing that bothered the Sergeant yesterday I was talking to him is this reluctance to say that we are exceptional or that we're a great country, and that maybe it sounds cocky when you say it, but that we should embrace that. And yet Americans are increasingly saying, let the French deal with this, let the Brits deal with this, let those in the Middle East deal with this. We're done sacrificing blood and so many of your friends and colleagues for this. Let others do that because we're tired of it. What do you say?
You know, first off, I want to say, you know, we do live in the greatest country on the face of the earth. There's no doubt in my mind is that. You know, and I heard a great quote the other day. You know, when America is strong, the globe and people across the world complain. But when America is weak, people across the globe suffer. And I think that's a true statement.
You know, Commander, there is that great burden with coming with power and status and just supremacy. Maybe what this administration is saying, we're not going to do that anymore. What is the danger if that is the message he's sending?
Nature abhors a vacuum, Neil. And if the United States is not going to step into that leadership role, then other countries are going to be vying for it. And those countries who mean to do us and the world harm will step into that vacuum and attempt to fill it. We can look around the world and see some of the issues throughout the Middle East that are going on with Iran, with ISIS. Look at what Russia is doing. It is time for us to step into the breach once again, become that country that leads around the world and becomes that beacon of freedom, because that is what we represent. We are the greatest nation on the face of the earth. We need to have a commander-in-chief that embraces that role and doesn't avoid it.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you, Commander, Sergeant Sean. You know, I'm not fit to share this screen with you, but I'm very grateful for everything you've done and for the message you're sending. We are exceptional. You guys all prove it. Thank you very, very much for joining us.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you.